Hello and welcome to Sports Den. Today I'm Obi Spencer. I'm here with the esteemed head man here at Spanglish Sports, Eduardo. We've got a lot of exciting stuff today without Scott, unfortunately. But here on the Sports Den, we're just a couple of guys, maybe three, maybe four, on Zingo TV, channel 250. And we're discussing everything you can want to discuss and complain about in sports. Just remember, if you want that Zingo TV app, it's free. You can download it at any of your app stores. Plus, it's on all your smart TVs after 2016. So let me bring in the man of the hour today. Eduardo, how are you?
I am doing great, Obi. Thank you very much for having me in the show.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And you couldn't have picked a better day to join me. I really appreciate it because the hot stove isn't the stove anymore in baseball. It's actually cooking, and they are putting together the ingredients and signing players to more money than I can imagine, which is less than the owners are pulling in, to be sure. We got a lot to talk about there. So let's start off right with the largest total dollar contract. Corey Seager heading from the Dodgers to Texas. A lot of guys leaving the Dodgers. What do you think about some of these big contracts that are being signed right now?
You know what? Incredible to see the size of the contracts in a how do we call it? Pandemic
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the owners are coming up with this money because I certainly in our industry we don't have it.
That's for sure. I mean, on this show, we talk a lot about the declining ratings of baseball, yet somehow they have $32 million a year to give to Corey Seager for the next 10 years, or Max Scherzer, who's going to get $43.3 million a year average over the next 3 years. He's going to be done with this contract when he's 40 years old. And somebody has. Now we know where Steve Cohen gets his money. But some of these other teams, even Toronto, signed Kevin Gossman for $22 million American per year. And like you said, these pandemic times, where are they getting this money? Who knows what's going to happen when this union and this ownership gets together? Do you think these guys are even going to get to play this first year of this contract and even see this first $30 million?
I am not so sure. I think that the owners are going to, and it has always worked that way. I mean, it's tradition with this when there is discussions of the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, that the owners lock the players out, saying that the players want to become richer and richer and leave them poorer and poorer. But I want would love for the owners and the players association to get to a point where they say, you know what, let's follow the lead of the NBA, become partners with our players, and start thinking about how to get people back into the seats, into the stadiums, instead of arguing about minuscule stuff. The game of baseball is losing its stature that it had.
There's no doubt that it's losing its stature. And we talk, is it the product? Is it the packaging? And one of the things that's, as you say, that when the industry is dying, that's like when it's hardest for the owners and the employees to get along. So I agree with you 100% that baseball needs to figure some things out, how to revamp its product and its packaging of its product. And that's a long-term goal. But you're going to have players in this union who have 1 or 2 years of baseball left in their lives. And they may not even be making $1 million a year. So like they might have $4 million to make, and then their careers are over. And so they are going to have different point of views than the owners who are like, we make billions every year off the sport. And we want to make billions every year of the sport for decades to come. I want my children to be making billions off of this sport for decades to come. So I don't know if it's as easy for them as it was in basketball. Basketball got lucky that it got popular just at the right time. Plus, I think the players in basketball, they have more dynamic personalities that they can show in the field. There's no complaining when a player does something fancy in a basketball game. When somebody flips a bat, we don't know whether we're supposed to be okay or not with it, which hurts the ability of a player to market themselves.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is, and I have always questioned the idea if baseball has given their players the market value that they deserve, because they don't market as, and I'll play you the example for Toronto. We've had uh, the Braves and the Braves come to play in Toronto, and you see the stadium basically empty because they market it as a normal interleague game. Why don't you, during that game, bring the players from the past and play it as a, let's relive the World Series of '92 when the Jays played Atlanta and won. That brings more, and more, the fan base will adopt it more than if it's just another game. And that's what the game of baseball has been missing, attracting the young kids to this game that was always a game of the young. And it's sad to see it go. It's sad to see it go because the players are not put at the forefront of the game. They are played is the team comes first before the player, and that's not the way it should be.
I mean, I think you've brought up basketball, where I think the player comes first. I know NBA fans who are consider themselves LeBron James fans who have Cavalier stuff, Miami Heat stuff, back to Cavalier stuff, now LA Lakers stuff, and they don't see in their own mind that they've done anything wrong. I know other folks who are Kevin Durant fans who have Oklahoma City stuff, Warrior stuff, and now Net stuff. And again, they don't feel like they've done anything wrong. They root for the players. The player moves from team to team. It's the ultimate individual rooting sport on a team sport. And then in football, they hide all their players behind the helmet and the mask. Tom Brady's like really one of the few people I know where you have, every now and then a quarterback, Tom Brady or Brett Favre moves, but it's not a common thing where a player moves and your fandom moves with that player. It's very uncommon. It pretty much has to be a quarterback. Even when DeMarcus Ware moved to Denver, people still stayed Cowboy fans and just rooted for him in the Super Bowl. So you can get away with it either way. But I do think when it comes to marketing players, to me, baseball's biggest problem is when the postseason comes, I don't know if my best player is going to be there. And this was not such a problem when the sport was regional and the country was regional and the news was regional, but everything is national now. So the fact that Trout has gone from the best player in baseball is now peaked and now starting to come down and never made the playoffs. As dominant as a player as he was, never got to that national stage. That's what baseball has to figure out. How do I get my Mike Trouts so that the guy people want to watch is in the playoffs and somebody goes, hey, I'd like to watch and see what that guy does. Just because I want to see what he is. There's so many playoff series you watch because you're like, oh, who's this up and coming young basketball player? I want to see. I've heard about him while I've been watching my team. Let me see how he does in the first round of the playoffs against LeBron. Oh, he did okay. He did Bauer, whatever it is. And then the next year when he gets to the second round, you already know who he is. And you do not get that in baseball, at least not yet.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know when baseball changed, because if you remember the olden days of baseball, yes, it was the mighty Yankee machine of the 20s and 30s and the 40s and the 60s, but you knew the players. You knew that there was a DiMaggio. You knew that there was a Yogi Berra. You knew that there was a Baby Ruth. So you knew who the players were, and that was the markability of the game. You wanted to see those players, and right now, baseball doesn't have that market. That approach, and and you're seeing it with some teams that they focus on the players. the Jays focus on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Otani came into the picture, and it became a big phenomenon in Anaheim. But where are the rest? Why don't you market those players from the rest of the teams that are those phenomenons that would bring fans to the seats?
That this is a fair question, and this is what I think baseball has to figure out in its winter meetings. This is the bigger question, I think, than what the CBA is. I think the bigger question has to be how can we sign players, and we can probably as a this is like you said, partner with them in such a way that we can help you. We'll help you get more endorsements, be bigger, be more famous, and you'll help us by finding a way to keep the top players from making as much. And we'll make more money and raise the value of the sport. And then the next contract that we sign, everyone will benefit. That's hard to say to people, did not take 10 million and only take 8 million, 5 million. There's a big difference between 5 million a year and 10 million a year. I mean, that's double. That's a lot of money. It doesn't sound like a big difference to you or I, because 5 million is a lot to begin with, but that extra 5 million is even a lot more. That's generational. That's more years of never having to work a single day than only making 5 million. So baseball, we have these big contracts that we've talked about that were just signed. And we talk about all the time, all these big players who sign these 10-year contracts and what that's going to mean at the end of those contracts. And now baseball has what's going to look like in 10 years. That's its big question. Now, the sport that we've been talking about that's not suffering, obviously, is the NFL, which had another exciting weekend. What were your biggest takeaways from this NFL weekend before I start going into specific questions for you?
There were some surprises in this past weekend, but I think I loved that game of Tampa Bay. That Tampa, and it's not uh, because you have the best quarterback in the game in the team. It was just a powerful game in the idea that both teams actually played the game out the way it's supposed to be played, which you didn't see in a lot of the other games, and it's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, that was certainly one of the games that caught my eye. I mean, the your Dallas Cowboys losing on Thanksgiving, though, that was a heck of a game. A lot of points scored, a lot of great action. The Bengals handed the Steelers a can of whoop, and solidified themselves as really a contender in the AFC, which is a big mess. Patriots are, have won 6 in a row now, the longest winning streak in the league. And I think the real big takeaway is there's 11 teams in the NFL right now that are on a 1-game streak, either a 1-game winning streak or a 1-game losing streak. So it's 11 teams that did not do what they did the week before, whether it was win or lose, and were muddled in mediocrity. And I can't decide if it makes it interesting or boring, especially in the AFC.
One of the things that really surprises me with football these days, and no one, just to cut into what you are saying, is you look at a team like the Jets. They went into Texas, into Arlington, and they won. I was very surprised that they went into a stadium like that, and they actually won a game very convincingly, because they didn't instead they came back from behind. They were leading that game like no other time. That was one game that surprised me very much. I I lost my way watching the 49ers win, but I thought the Vikings were going to take that one, and I don't know what happened. I don't know really what happened there.
Well, the Vikings are, our Kirk Cousins team, and Kirk Cousins is a guy who makes a lot of money. Is an NFL quarterback, but can just give up on a game. I don't mean he emotionally gives up. Sorry, Kirk Cousins. That's not what I'm suggesting. Just you show up on some days and you're not there, and I'm sure you're trying your best, and it just doesn't happen for you. And he's got his 3,000 passing yards, 23 touchdowns with 3 interceptions, 67 completion percentage. Matter of fact, over 100 rating at quarterback, but just the wins don't seem to come for him. And with Dalvin Cook going down, all the pressure is going to be on him. He's got Justin Jefferson, but is it going to be enough? I don't know. I don't really think it is. It's going to be a tough one for him. And meanwhile, I think that in the AFC, it's really, I know it's hard to count out Tom Brady. It's ridiculous to count out Tom Brady. It's usually a bad move to count out Tom Brady. The defense that won them the Super Bowl last year has gone from super to average. Nothing wrong with an average defense. It's a good enough defense to win them a championship, as a matter of fact. But I'm just looking at Kyler Murray in Arizona, and I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And if the road to Super Bowl goes through Green Bay, it is going to be hard in that cold to beat Aaron Rodgers. And I like Mighty Mouse. I see what he's doing out there. So I like both those teams still more than I like Tampa Bay. I don't fear the the Rams or the Cowboys if I'm Tampa Bay. But those other two teams, I think they're legit for real. One's winning without its best quarterback and wide receiver, and the other one beat that team when it had its best quarterback and wide receiver. So Aaron Rodgers is really looking like back-to-back MVPs at this point. We see how the season ends, even after missing a game because he may or may not have, because he had COVID and probably lied about it, about the injection. So I still think he's going to end up ahead of everybody else when this is all said and done.
It's going to be an interesting battle. I think Rodgers has a lot of. He's a great quarterback. I mean, what can you say about him? The numbers show what the kind of talent he has. But if you give me the choice, who do I take at the end of the day? A Rodgers or a Brady? I have to go with the guy that does it every single big game possible, and that's Brady. Brady responds when you least expect it.
I mean, I look. I think Brady did a great service to his name last year when he won the Super Bowl, and the Patriots were miserable, absolutely miserable last year. Belichick has gotten kind of erased a lot of that with me this year. He got a defense back, and lo and behold, that team's won 6 in a row. I mean, does have 2 games against the Bills, and we're going to find out if they're really good or not. They're still probably going to make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. It looks like Brady's back there again with the defense winning championships. You can't ignore the fact that the defense was the most important thing in the game last year. We, as a sports community, we put too much on the quarterback, both for winning and losing. And Brady has really benefited from a lot of great defense around him, consistent defense, a coach who can coach defense better than anybody else. So yes, he won a lot. He struggled also with Manning as the opposing quarterback. When Belichick couldn't stop Manning, he couldn't. So Brady is a great quarterback, is the most accomplished quarterback we've seen, and will be the most accomplished quarterback we've ever seen. I can't imagine any other quarterback doing what he did between his longevity and everything else. But when the game's on the line, if you ask me who I want to put in the game at that moment, I'm going to put in Rodgers over Brady. I wasn't convinced Brady was going to lead the Bucs back against last week. But I was convinced the last time that I saw Rodgers get the ball that you were giving it back with too much time. So And that's what it comes down to. I'm not convinced Brady's going to get it done. I mean, last year we saw Brady do this. I mean, don't forget that was there was 4 downs. Like he did. So I'm just saying. I'm not saying Brady's not good. I'm saying you're not giving Rodgers enough credit here because he has shown in playoff games with the ball in his hand in the last drive, he is phenomenal himself.
Now, I know you are an Eagles fan, and our good friend and the other co-host of this show is a Giants fan, and he was going for the Eagles. He actually went. He said, "I cannot see the Giants beating the Eagles this time around." And I said, "Don't count them out. They love to go into that stadium in Philadelphia and play little tricks." What did you think of the game?
I don't think we need to waste our audience's time with that game. Honestly, every time I talk to Scott, I tell him how much we spend way too much time on Northeast football. And with those two teams after that game, I don't think we should bother our audience with that at all. That's an insult to our audience. The game was atrocious. The teams are both atrocious. The football team has now passed the Eagles to get into a playoff spot. That's my comment on that. We should not do that to our audience and talk about that team, either of those teams, unless one of them makes a surprise run. If you want to talk about a bad team that had a nice win, I like the Jets. That was much nicer of a conversation than the Eagles. Could talk about Atlanta occasionally winning some games. You could talk about the horribleness of the game that was the Ravens and the Browns. I mean, thank you for putting that on Sunday Night NFL. That made me stay up watching that with my, that was horrific. I had to drive home from dropping my son off at school and catch the last quarter of that game on the radio, and it was atrocious to listen to. I can't imagine what it was like to watch that game. There was some stat. Let me see if I can find the stats. There was a tweet about that game that was just utterly remarkable. This is the Sunday night game that the NFL gave us. The Ravens are the only team in Super Bowl era. Thank you to Stats by Stats. The Ravens are the only team in the Super Bowl era to score fewer than 17 points, have fewer than 325 total yards, throw at least 4 more interceptions than their opponent, and still win the game. Teams with those numbers were 275-1 in the Super Bowl era entering that game. I mean, that was a horrible game. And I have been so high on Baker for so long. I'm coming off of that mountain now. I've been slowly taking myself off and descending down from the Baker Mayfield mountain, and I'm done with that mountain. But boy, I almost died on that hill. I was up there just a little too long, to say the least.
The one game that caught my attention Sunday was the Broncos and Chargers. It was an amazing game, and I said before the week when we did a show on Sunday morning, the NFL Insiders game show, that if the Chargers took it easy, they will lose the game, and that exactly what happened. They went overconfident into Denver, and they got clobbered because they didn't think of what the conditions were going to be. They concentrated on the offense and they forgot about the defensive game completely.
The Chargers, and now this different quarterback, different coach, different city. But this is the time of year when the Chargers go to sleep. End of November into December, the Chargers decide, we've given our fans enough. We've made our run. It is time to go to sleep. So I'm not surprised the Chargers did not hold up their end of the bargain, to say the least. But they're still in the playoff race. Everyone in the AFC West is in the playoff race still. At 6-5, they're better than the Colts. They're behind the Bengals. and behind the Bills, but that's it. They're all at 6-5. Right now they're deciding the third wild card spot between them. And speaking of great quarterbacks, I know they didn't play this week, but they've won 4 in a row. Their defense has been spectacular. Are you still off of the Mahomes train? Because that train is rolling again. Are you still staying off? Or are you ready to get back on board the Mahomes train?
Oh God, no! I am not going to get back on that train again, because it just leads to a lot of pain when he goes down again and he starts thinking that he's the best.
Okay, I mean, right now he is third in the league in touchdowns with 25, tied with Josh Allen. He has 10 interceptions, which is a lot, but among the guys over 20, most of the guys who have that many interceptions are close to him in touchdowns. Except, then you got Burrow at 22 and 12, and Ryan at 16 and 11. Before you get to some really bad guys on touchdowns, his passer rating's up at 96.7. He's at 66% completion rating, and he's averaging over 7 yards of completion. Now, I don't know. I remember touchdown interception ratio again. It's now at 2.5 to 1. It was a little below 2 to 1. Tom Brady's obviously at 30, leading the league in touchdowns 30-9. So that's showing us something. But boy, I don't know. I think that he may be back, and to sleep on him is probably a mistake.
You know what? It's not that I dislike Mahomes. I think he's a remarkable player. I cannot say that he's not, but his nose went a little bit too high for his own good. Because and it's not to say that he did it on his own. I think he was made up. They put a lot of accolade from the media in that idea that he was at par with Brady, at par with Rodgers, and with a lot of the elite past quarterbacks in history. And I think that it gave him overconfidence in in his potential. And
I think that his potential. I think that I'm with Scott. We are talking about this guy having a bad year. He's got 3,200 passing yards, which puts him in the top 10. He's got 4. He's number 2 in passing attempts, which obviously makes it a lot harder for him to have a higher completion percentage. But he's still at 65, which is low for him. Let's be honest. But the touchdown interception ratio is fine. He's been playing better the last few weeks. The defense is putting him in positions where he doesn't have to just throw for 40 points. The 40 points are benefit if he can get them. And he's a lot younger than Brady. And I don't know who else I would say is coming up behind him. Justin Herbert looks good. He's got 60. He's about the same completion percentage. With 10 less passes, 12 less passes, and has more yards. So he's throwing more yards per completions. Josh Allen certainly is so many people love. I'm not a big fan. I still kind of waiting to believe it. It's only 67% completion percentage. So there's some guys coming, maybe. But I don't see anyone who's coming that makes me go, when Brady were to retire tomorrow, how I wouldn't consider, let me say, if Brady and Rodgers retired tomorrow, I don't see anyone I would put there behind him as Mahomes. Those are the two older heads of state. They obviously have accolades, Super Bowl wins, although Rodgers is the same Super Bowl record as Mahomes. That Brady doesn't, that nobody else has. I'm not going to put the other Super Bowl winner in Roethlisberger ahead of him anymore. Maybe in his peak, even then, I don't think so. I don't think he's better. I think he's better than Wilson. So I don't know who else is even there chasing him. That when Rodgers and Brady retire, that you're gonna be able to go. You know, I saw so and so coming up, and that guy's better. I knew he was gonna be better than Mahomes. So I don't think he had a big head. I don't think the media gave him a big head because I don't.
So so let's continue talking about this, and we are going to kind of look at what's coming up for week 13. And we have that in week 13, we have the Cowboys and Saints on Thursday. Interesting game is going to be a great game for Dak to showcase what he missed on Thanksgiving game. Uh, the other games are mighty interesting. The Buccaneers going to Atlanta face the Falcons. Uh, the Arizona Cardinals going to Chicago for an afternoon battle. Um, the One of the most interesting games will be the Patriots and Bills on Monday Night Football, and the Broncos and Chiefs.
No, I'm sorry, I missed your response.
So while you were away, I just
Oh,
highlighted a
things are
little bit of
still
what's
not working
coming up.
for me. I don't know if you can hear me, but I am
I
not
can
hearing
hear
you.
you. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, Obi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Obi? Can you hear me? I mean, speak.
I'm talking, but I'm not
Uh,
hearing you. Yeah, okay.
Now,
Yes.
awesome.
Sorry to those of you who are watching. Hope you didn't leave us on our moment of zen there. Hope you enjoyed yourself and took a moment to breathe. But that might have been the legendary football gods asking us to possibly in our last 10 minutes talk just a little bit about basketball. I know it's
No.
still early for me. Basketball doesn't really start till you open your presents on Christmas Day, but I do think that the Nets in the East and the Warriors and the Sun in the West have started to establish themselves as really the teams to beat in this early part of the season. Do you have any? I know basketball isn't your go-to sport, and your Raptors are struggling. But any ideas, thoughts on basketball, Eduardo?
Definitely no. Yeah, you are right. It's not my my number one sport. I follow it. Uh, I do follow it though. Uh, you know what? I said from day one that once once the Nets got all their players back into playing shape, that they would be the number one team in the NBA, and it's working out that way. They have probably one of the best, not just one of the best starting five teams in the NBA, but they have a solid bench behind them, uh, and and that's what makes a team. Uh, and is one of the only teams that is playing actually as a team. You don't see individual play. You see everyone sharing. When one player cannot come up to par, the other one backs it up. So it's interesting to see it from that end. Yes, the Toronto Raptors, you can call them dismay, and I don't think, uh, and I keep saying this, and I'll be firm with this, that if the Toronto Raptors don't come up to par, not just they will lose their audience, but Toronto is bound to lose the team from Toronto. we will end up being another Montreal Expo expedition gone, because we are not supporting the fan base. The team doesn't seem to be wanting to bring players that are of caliber to play, and it's a shame. Hey, Obi. Obi left. So let's look at what we are talking about, and let's go down the Eastern Conference. Uh, I look at at the position tables, and it is the Nets in first place in the Eastern Conference. The Bulls are in second place. The Miami Heat, in third place. The Wizards are in fourth, and the Bucks in fifth. And it's very interesting to see that the Bucks, the team that everyone said that with the Greek they were going to be the number one team in the NBA, they are not what they are. They just have come down to reality. One player does not a team make, and that's the only thing you can say. Uh, they are 13-8, so it's going to be very, very hard for them to come back up. Hey, Obi.
Hello there. Was that just me this time? That my internet?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
because all right, whatever. That's nobody needs to hear all my excuses. That's nobody's interested in that.
So as I was saying, no, you are right. It's the Nets are the number one team in the NBA to me right now, and the team to beat for going in into the final two. Uh, I think they are going to battle for the championship this year. Uh, and in the case of the Raptors, as we were talking, I was trying to say while you were frozen. I think that we might be the Montreal Expo story of basketball, because if the team doesn't invest money in players, this town is not going to support it.
Yeah, yeah. It looked like they were going to be something, not because Kawhi went there and won, but maybe it looked like maybe more people will come back and they can build things around it even after Kawhi left. But that didn't happen. Instead, you know, people left. I don't know. Celtics are struggling also. So there's room in the. That's the thing. There's room in the West, in the East, for some teams that were supposed to be better to move up. You got the Hornets. Nobody thought the Hornets were going to be anything. The Wizards. Nobody thought the Wizards were going to be anything. So that's two teams in the top eight that there's room for a team like the Raptors or the Celtics and most likely the Hawks to make their way into the playoff race, especially if the Sixers don't figure this out. I mean, Embiid was out for a while, but he came back and they still lost in double overtime. Without Simmons, they need something else, even when Embiid and Tobias Harris are healthy. So there's a lot of room to get into the playoffs in the East. And in the West, look, the Warriors are playing like Steph is 5 years younger. He's unbelievable to watch. The Phoenix Suns are the only team that's giving them any run for their money. They get to play it today. That's why I wanted to talk a little basketball, because people are already talking about the MVP and whether it's going to be Steph or somebody else with what's going on out there in the West. I mean, it's way too early to even begin, in my mind, to make that decision. But this Warrior team is really phenomenal when you consider that they have Klay Thompson still on the bench. Like the Nets, they have a key player still on the bench. The Nets, for one reason or another, they each have those players for different reasons not in their lineup. But both those teams look very scary, and I'm not sure that anyone's going to take out the Nets in the East. I agree with you that it's a team that's figured out how to play together now, even if Kyrie doesn't come back. It's a team that has an unbelievable player in Durant who came off a phenomenal run in the Olympics. Like really, he got there, things looked bad, and he just put that team on his shoulder and said, "Excuse us, guys, this is what we're supposed to do." And it looked fantastic for him. Meanwhile, like I said, you got Steph on the Warriors waiting for his other splash brother to come back, scoring what sounds like 50 points a night. It's not. It feels like 50 points a night, and making a big deal of what's happening over there. Lakers obviously can compete if and when their team is full. I like the Nuggets because I just like what Denver has, but they're not competing right now at all. Morant is something to look at. The Mavericks are something to look at, but nothing scares you if you're the Warriors, really. So I think we're heading right now to a Warrior Nets final. Be shocking unless it was Phoenix who gets in there. But trades happen, and players get injured. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this season plays out. And like I said earlier when I first said, let's talk a little bit about basketball. Basketball does not start until, gifts are done being opened around the Christmas tree, because that's really when the season gets going, really when you have an idea of who's in it, who can make moves, who can't make moves, and where things lie. So we got another month of preseason basketball that counts, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, I always say that the NBA really doesn't start until the All-Star break, because what you are doing the first until All-Star break is realigning your team to see how defenses work, how offenses, different strategies in offense, and then is when you start really playing the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season for a spot. But one of the teams that, and I have to say it because they took probably the best player of Toronto out, is the Miami Heat, and it's amazing to see how those two players blended in Miami, and that team is working like a machine. The Knicks were one of those teams that everyone was surprised that they were at the top of the heap to start, and now they have dropped again. But I think the Knicks have a chance. The Knicks will make the playoffs for the first time in a long time.
They were in the playoffs last year, the Knicks, comfortably. I mean, when at the beginning of the year, Sky asked me, what do I consider a success for the Knicks? And so I said, the Knicks are not going to be in that top tier group of teams you think can win. It's going to probably be the Nets, the Sixers, the Bucks, and maybe the Heat. So some group of those teams are going to be the teams you think can win out of the East. At this point, I don't think that's going to be the Sixers. I think it's the Bucks. I think it's the Heat. But I said the Knicks need to be in that next tier, those teams that are comfortably in the playoffs. Right now, like the Sixers, they're not. But I see them passing the Hornets. I see them passing the Wizards, and maybe the Bulls stay in there. The problem for the Knicks in that definition is the Hawks are coming up behind them and the Sixers are coming up behind them. But I don't see the Knicks as a team that's going to win after the first round. I don't think Knicks fans should expect to win after the first round. I think if Knicks fans can get 2 playoff seasons in a row under their belt, that starts to tell other NBA players out there, hey, this is a stable franchise. And once you establish that the Knicks are a stable franchise, Jim Dolan just needs to get out of the way, and players are going to come. But right now, players do not think it's a stable franchise, and that's why they won't go there, because Jim Dolan's seems to be not somebody who you want to play for. And if you don't want to play there, you're not going to go there, even though you get all that New York City endorsement money, especially with the Nets right there looking like, oh, maybe we can get some of this money from the Nets. So Knicks have a big job on their hands and need to get up a couple more places, not be in this playing game. Very possible. I mean, in all honesty, the Celtics are in 11th place, so they're not in the playoffs at all at 11-10, but they're only 3.5 games out of the Nets. So everyone who's 500 or above is within 3.5 games in the East. In the West, first of all, it's shocking. You only have 9 teams that are above 500. But even the 500 Nuggets are 8 games out already. So there's a completely different story going on in the West than the East, with it really being significantly more top loaded. Well, not significant, more gap for sure uh, between the best teams and the eighth place team in the West.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah, so before we go on, I want to mention Eduardo asked me about the beard. If you've been paying attention to me, you know that I've been celebrating No Shave November here, which is all about men's health. And by men's health, I mean those of us with prostates. So remember, get your prostate exam. Talk to your doctor about that. Prostate cancer got Steve Jobs. If he can't afford it, you can't either. Also, we are on Zingo TV, channel 250. You can find us there. You can find us on Spanglish Sports Network, both YouTube and Facebook. And I believe we even have a Twitch site going on now. So we're all over the place. Watch us, read us, love it. We are an all-inclusive sports network. We definitely want you to hop on board and find us where you can. The last thing before we wrap up is it's Giving Tuesday. So if you have any money left over from your holiday e-shopping and retail shopping, find your favorite charity and give them a few bucks. Believe me, they can use it. And speaking of a few bucks, let's bring this back full circle and let's focus on the New York Mets and what they've done so far in free agency. Because as a Met fan, I don't know whether to be ecstatic or scared about what's going on. We mentioned earlier that the New York Mets had gotten a few guys onto their team. Some big money men. They haven't signed Conforto and Stroman yet back. So there is that problem or fear, if you will. But what do you think of the New York Mets signing after I scolded us for talking about Eastern sports earlier, Eduardo?
look, the Mets are working towards getting a great team on board, and the signing of Max Scherzer, is just phenomenal. I cannot say. Uh, I mean, they did lose Syndergaard, which it's a big loss at the end of the day. But I think that uh, the Scherzer signing is a plus. I think that a lot of the things that the Mets are doing is building a team that actually can play with each other. That are players that either have had experiences with each other uh, in other teams and united them under one umbrella. But no, they are. I think as it stands right now, pitching wise, they are the team to beat in the AL East. In the NL East, there is no comparison. I mean, yes, Atlanta has kept a lot of their staff, but let's remember, Atlanta had its struggles at the end of the season with pitching, uh, and they were able to survive because they acquired pitchers at the end of the term, and that was what kept them going. But now let's see if Atlanta can keep those pitchers from the after the winter meetings. See who ends up. December 2nd will tell a lot. That's what we come down to. December 2nd is the deadline, and see who opts for free agency, who doesn't opt for free, and who accepts contracts. So we'll see.
Absolutely. I mean, you didn't have Syndergaard all season. The Mets were in it for half the year. So now you get Scherzer. Hopefully he pitches a whole year. You get your full year from DeGrom, hopefully. And you got two great starters. The other thing, like you said, and this is something that as winter meetings come along and the CBA comes into effect, owners have to decide if they like what happened this year in baseball, because if not, it's going to happen again and again and again. And that was Atlanta wants to win. So when people are if you want to win and you're willing to be a buyer at the end, then be a buyer and you put a winning product on the field after being horrific and not even a team worth of note in the first half of the season. They became World Series champions. So that model's out there now, and that model exists. And some of those lower salary teams, they can do that too because they have the prospects because they keep being bad. So this might be the new Florida Marlins model that that you're just going to see them doing now on. It's like, man, we're not going to compete for the first half of the year. We're in striking distance. Let's rent a bunch of players, pay them for half a year, win a championship, ship them off, and go to our fans. Why don't you come and watch? Why don't you come and watch us? So baseball is going to have to deal with that. And one of the many things they're going to have to deal with at these winter meetings.
I think one of the things that baseball has to look at is as well, and I hate to say this because I love the game of baseball and it has been my passion for years. I think, and is that we have to bring the old game back. I know that they are trying to speed up the game. I know that they are trying to do a lot of things, but they have to speed up the game. There is no ins buts about it. The idea that players cannot slide into second base, the idea that slide away from home because you don't want to injure the catcher. That's not the game of baseball. The game of baseball was built around the excitement and sliding away from home plate or sliding away in the second, not sliding hard into second base. That takes away from what the game was and what brought the passion of a lot of their fans. Uh, they have to, as we said prior, Obi, they have to strategize in marketing. Market your players aggressively so that people get interested and follow the game. And I'll go back to the last strike. What brought back the game of baseball from the last strike? A guy by the name of Mark McGuire and a guy by the name of Sammy Sosa. Those two guys made the game what it was and brought excitement back to the game of baseball. And that's how you market the game. That was the best home run race that there was in a game of baseball in decades.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great point. Is that they marketed players, and that's what brought people back. People want to see the players not more than they want to see the teams, and that's something that you have to remember when you're out there trying to sell this product. Is people? That's what people want. People want to see the players, not the teams. Even if you're a fan of the team, you want to see your best player be on your team. But it's something that's hard, I think, for the owner sometimes to remember because they want to be the product. And, we see that with the umpires too. They want to be the product. But baseball, yeah, it's got some decisions to make. One of the other things, to your point about sliding, I was listening to some football player talking about baseball, and he's like, "Hey, baseball's these guys are amazing athletes. I've played basketball with them. You wouldn't believe what they do." And it comes down to you have to let baseball players show what their athleticism is like. And on that note, Eduardo, I'm going to thank you very much for stepping in today, being part of this great chat, which was about baseball. It's good to get that conversation in the middle of a football season. Thank you for playing along with me in basketball and that, of course, is all the times, the time when my internet died, but of course you managed through. And for everyone who doesn't know, Eduardo is the head honcho back here. He is the guy who keeps us all on target, gets us doing what we're supposed to do. And anytime we get to put him on air, it's a real treat for us. So thank you, Eduardo. Anything you got to say before we sign off? Go ahead and lay it out.
It's definitely a pleasure to be on the Sports Den. I love what you guys do every single Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Keep on doing the great job, Obi, because you are one of the mains here, and we are looking forward for you to come back with your show because that was also another of the shows that we always love to hear. Great interviews, great tasting of the good stuff. So let's try to bring it back. And with that, I say farewell and thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you again for joining us.